Welcome to Legacy Black of Power. What if the brightest lights in Hollywood didn't just reveal beauty, but erased it? What if fame slowly convinced the world's most celebrated black actresses that their own skin was something to fix, something to fade, something to hide? These weren't unknown women chasing validation. They were icons, trailblazers, symbols of black excellence, women who once stood proudly in their brown skin, until the cameras, contracts, and quiet whispers told them it wasn't enough. Tonight, we're not talking about beauty trends. We're uncovering the invisible pressure that rewrote faces, fractured identities, and left scars no makeup could ever cover. This is the story Hollywood never wanted you to look too closely at. Stay with us. LaToya Jackson, the woman who vanished into a white shadow. In the Jackson family, greatness was never optional. It was oxygen. Michael became the sound of a generation. Janet turned movement into power. And LaToya was born between legends, forever standing in their glow, struggling to be seen as more than a name stitched to theirs. She wasn't talentless. She wasn't invisible. But in a family where genius screamed, LaToya whispered, and Hollywood doesn't listen to whispers. By the early 1990s, LaToya was already exhausted. Years of tabloid ridicule, abusive control behind closed doors, an industry that didn't know what to do with a black woman who didn't fit a clear narrative. Too Jackson to be ignored, not Jackson enough to be crowned. Then came the night that changed everything. June 1992, Beverly Hilton Hotel. The room glittered with flashbulbs and champagne smiles. When LaToya stepped onto the red carpet, conversation stopped mid-sentence. Cameras froze. Not in admiration, but confusion. Her face was pale, not lighter, pale, smooth and ghostly under the lights. Yet her neck, her hands, her arms, still deeply brown. The contrast wasn't subtle. It was violent. By morning, the headlines were merciless. Another Jackson changes skin color. The story spread faster than the truth ever could. Some whisper vitiligo, clinging to Michael's confirmed diagnosis as a shield. But LaToya never confirmed it. No medical statement. No explanation. Just silence. And silence in Hollywood is an admission written by strangers. Rumors fill the vacuum. Chemical peels. Hydroquinone. Acid treatments in private Beverly Hills clinics. Paparazzi swore they saw her leaving a medical building wrapped in bandages. Face hidden, neck covered. An image that vanished as mysteriously as it appeared. What hurt most wasn't the gossip. It was the judgment. The black community, once her foundation, turned cold. You erased yourself to survive, they said. You sold your skin for acceptance. LaToya disappeared. Not for weeks, for a year. When she returned, something was gone. Her music no longer mattered. Her voice was drowned out by the image. Albums faded. Interviews dried up. She became a spectacle instead of an artist. And the cruel irony? She didn't become accepted. She became isolated. Michael ascended into myth. Janet became a global icon. LaToya remained frozen in one moment. The night her reflection betrayed her. That red carpet didn't just change her appearance. It severed her identity. Because when LaToya Jackson looked into the mirror after the camera stopped flashing, she didn't see fame. She didn't see survival. She saw a stranger staring back. A woman shaped by pressure, silence, and an industry that convinced her being herself was the one thing she could no longer afford. She didn't lose her career that night. She lost the right to be seen as human. And from that moment on, LaToya Jackson was no longer an artist in the public eye, only a white shadow standing beside a legend. Diana Ross. When a legend became a stranger to her own reflection, before Hollywood tried to remake her, Diana Ross had already conquered it. She came from Detroit, from Motown, from a time when a black woman standing center stage was an act of quiet rebellion. With the Supremes, Diana didn't just sing. She broke ceilings. Her brown skin glowed under stage lights that were never built for women like her. She was elegance without apology, beauty without permission. To millions, Diana Ross wasn't just famous. She was proof. Proof that black women didn't need to soften themselves to be adored. Proof that grace could be dark-skinned, commanding, undeniable. But Hollywood is patient. And pressure doesn't always arrive as cruelty. Sometimes it arrives as praise. By the mid-1980s, Diana had reached a dangerous place. Untouchable status, an Oscar nomination, icon roles, magazine covers begging for her image. And quietly, without ever saying out loud, the rules began to shift. The industry didn't ask her to change. It suggested softer lighting, lighter makeup, more versatile looks. Each adjustment seemed small, harmless, professional, until one day, America opened Vogue. March 5th, 1986. On the cover stood Diana Ross, but not the woman they remembered. Her face was pale, porcelain smooth, glowing in a way that felt unfamiliar. White America applauded the transformation. Timeless, refined, polished. The black community recoiled, because what they saw wasn't evolution. They saw erasure. The outrage wasn't about vanity. It was about loss. A woman who once carried black pride into white-dominated spaces now looked like she'd been reshaped to survive them. But the deepest wound didn't come from headlines or critics. It came at home. One quiet night in the early 1990s, Diana's daughter, Rhonda, flipped through an old photo album. Page after page of Motown-era images. A young Diana, dark-skinned, radiant, eyes burning with confidence. Rhonda paused. She stared. Then she asked a question that sliced deeper than any review ever could. "Mom, who is that?" The room fell silent. Diana closed the album without answering. Because how you explain to your child that the woman who raised her no longer exists? That the mirror no longer reflects the self you once fought to protect? That question haunted everything afterward. Their relationship fractured, not loudly, not publicly, but in the quiet way that hurts more. Rhonda pulled away from the spotlight, choosing a life far from Hollywood's demands. Diana stayed, split between two identities, the pale diva adored by the industry and the brown-skinned mother her daughter struggled to recognize. She had won the world and lost herself. Diana Ross never announced the transformation, never confessed to pressure, never explained the slow fading of the woman who once stood unshaken. Because in Hollywood, survival rarely looks like surrender. It looks like adaptation. But adaptation has a cost. And for Diana Ross, the cost wasn't fame or legacy or applause. It was a moment her own child couldn't see herself in her mother's face anymore. Halle Berry, the crown that began to burn. For a moment in history, Halle Berry didn't just win an Oscar. She rewrote what was possible. March 2002. Under the weight of centuries, she stood on that stage, trembling, crying, victorious, the first black woman to ever hold the Academy Award for Best Actress. In that moment, her brown skin was a barrier. It was a triumph. She was living proof that talent could finally outrun bias. But Hollywood doesn't celebrate milestones. It exploits them. After the applause faded, something shifted. The industry didn't ask what Halle wanted to become. It watched what she feared losing. Youth, desire, relevance. The crown she wore that night came with a silent rule. You may be historic, but you must remain beautiful. And beauty in Hollywood is never allowed to age. Slowly, the conversation changed. Not about her performances, about her face, her glow, her freshness. Side-by-side photos appeared online. The 1990s Halle. The 2000s Halle. Comment sections turned clinical. Lighter. Smoother. Different. Then came 2007. At the Perfect Stranger premiere in New York, Halle stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashing like gunfire. Her face looked pale beneath the lights, unnaturally even, while her neck remained darker, untouched. Photographers zoomed in. Blogs exploded overnight. The headlines didn't ask. They accused. Rumors spread of high-strength hydroquinone, of banned formulas whispered about in Beverly Hills spas, of a private procedure gone too far, something meant to freeze time, not scar it. Behind the rumors was a quieter truth. Halle Berry was afraid, not of aging, but of disappearing. Because Hollywood loves first and forgets them quickly. The fear wasn't vanity. It was survival. She had climbed a mountain no black woman had ever reached, and now every step downward felt like failure. When whispers surfaced that she had been hospitalized briefly for a skin reaction, the story mutated into legend. Burning, peeling, bandages. Whether true or not didn't matter anymore. The image stuck, and that's the cruel part. Halle Berry never needed proof to be judged. Every time she stood in front of a mirror after that, she didn't see an Oscar winner. She saw a woman dissected by flashbulbs, a face frozen between who she was and who she was expected to remain. The crown didn't protect her. It burned her, because being the first didn't make Halle free. It made her watched. And under that gaze, even the strongest icons begin to question whether excellence alone is enough, or if, to stay crowned, they must slowly erase the very skin that carried them there. Vivica A. Fox, the face that spoke before she did. Vivica A. Fox never had to chase attention. In the late 90s, it chased her. She was fire on screen, sharp, confident, unmistakably black. From Independence Day to Set It Off, Vivica didn't play background roles. She claimed space. Her face carried attitude, maturity, power. She looked like a woman who knew exactly who she was. But Hollywood had a problem with that, because confidence, especially in black women, is only tolerated when it stays young. As the years passed, the scripts thinned. The offers changed. Not because Vivica lost talent, but because the industry quietly decided her face was aging too honestly. The same features that once made her unforgettable were now labeled harsh, tired, past their prime. And that's when the mirror became louder than the applause. Vivica didn't disappear. She fought back the only way Hollywood taught women to fight, by altering the surface. Fillers, Botox, adjustments meant to soften time, to keep doors open just a little longer. But something went wrong. When she reappeared, audiences noticed before she even spoke. Her expression seemed stiff. Her smile didn't fully land. The internet didn't whisper. It laughed. Screenshots froze her face at its worst angles. Memes spread faster than empathy. Unrecognizable. What did she do to herself? She ruined her face. No one asked why. They didn't see a woman reacting to years of rejection dressed up as silence. They didn't see how Hollywood punishes black women twice. Once for aging, and again for trying not to. Vivica tried to laugh it off publicly. She blamed lighting, makeup, stress. But the truth was written in the tension of her face, a face caught between survival and self-betrayal. Eventually, she admitted regret. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to be heard by women who understood. She spoke about going too far, about wanting her old face back, about learning the hard way that Hollywood's approval always comes with a cost, and the bill is paid in pieces of yourself. Vivica A. Fox didn't lose her beauty. She was pressured into doubting it. Her story isn't about vanity. It's about what happens when an industry convinces a woman that her natural evolution is a flaw, and then mocks her for trying to fix it. Because in Hollywood, they don't just watch you age. They dare you to stop. And when you try, they punish you for that too. Lil' Kim, when reinvention became disappearance. Lil' Kim was never meant to be subtle. She exploded into hip-hop in the mid-1990s, like a warning shot, raw, sexual, fearless. In a male-dominated industry, she didn't ask for space. She took it, dark-skinned, unapologetic, and loud in every way black women were told not to be. Lil' Kim didn't just challenge beauty standards. She mocked them. At her peak, she was power wrapped in provocation. She looked exactly like herself. But behind the bravado was a wound that never healed. As a teenager, Kim had been abused, abandoned, told she wasn't pretty enough, not light enough, not soft enough. Those voices didn't disappear when the fame arrived. They got louder because hip-hop loved her confidence. But the world kept reminding her it came at a price. The joke started early. Late-night punchlines about her nose, her lips, her skin. Magazine covers praised her talent, but dissected her face. Even people who loved her music laughed at her appearance. And Lil' Kim heard all of it. Then came prison. In 2005, Kim went away at the height of her career. When she returned a year later, the industry had moved on, and so had the mirror. The woman who walked out of prison was carrying years of trauma, ridicule, and fear of irrelevance. And that's when the transformation began. Not all at once. Not overnight. A lighter shade here. A sharper nose there. Eyes widened. Jaw refined. Each procedure was framed as reinvention. But what it really was escape. When Lil' Kim stepped back into the spotlight, the reaction was brutal. Fans gasped. Media froze her face in headlines. Side-by-side comparisons turned her into a spectacle. Unrecognizable. A different person. What happened to Lil' Kim? But no one asked what happened to her. Because the truth is, Lil' Kim didn't wake up wanting to erase herself. She wanted the pain to stop. She wanted silence. She wanted to look in a mirror without hearing decades of laughter echo back at her. At one point, she admitted it. Quietly, heartbreakingly. I wasn't happy with who I was. That sentence explains everything. Lil' Kim didn't lose her face to surgery. She lost it to years of being told her original one was unacceptable. Today, when people talk about her, they rarely mention her influence, how she opened doors for women in rap, how she changed fashion, sexuality, power dynamics. They talk about her face. And that's the tragedy. Because Lil' Kim didn't disappear. She was pushed, pressed, mocked, molded, until reinvention stopped being creative and became survival. Her story is the darkest mirror of all. What happens when the world convinces you that becoming someone else is the only way to be loved, and then punishes you for succeeding? Beyoncé, the cost of perfection. Beyoncé was never allowed to be ordinary. From the moment she stepped into the spotlight as a teenager, perfection wasn't a goal. It was a requirement. Every note had to land. Every step had to hit. Every inch of her image had to feel intentional. Because in an industry that barely tolerates black excellence, Beyoncé wasn't just representing herself. She was carrying an entire expectation, and she carried it flawlessly. But perfection is heavy. As Destiny's Child rose, so did the scrutiny. Beyoncé wasn't just watched, she was measured. Her talent praised, her discipline admired, and her appearance quietly audited. Magazines zoomed in. Cameras lingered. Commentators dissected her glow. Her skin tone under different lights. The way her face seemed to shift from era to era. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just enough to make people whisper. Was it lighting? Makeup? Stage lights washing her out? Or was it something else? A subtle adjustment in a world where flawless must always look effortless? The truth is, Beyoncé never confirmed anything. She never needed to, because her power came from control, absolute control, over her music, her narrative, her image. Silence wasn't avoidance. It was strategy. But behind that strategy was pressure most people never see. Because Beyoncé didn't have the luxury of being imperfect. A single off photo could dominate headlines. A tired face could become a think piece. Aging, something every human experiences, was treated like a threat to her reign. So she refined, she polished, she curated, not to erase herself, but to protect the crown. Yet even protection has a cost. Fans began arguing over her face instead of her art. Screenshots replaced song analysis. Her humanity was slowly overshadowed by the myths she had built to survive. And here's the paradox. Beyoncé didn't change because she hated herself. She changed because the world demanded consistency from a woman who was never allowed to evolve freely. She became a symbol of black excellence, and symbols aren't allowed to crack. In public, Beyoncé remained untouchable. In private, she carried the weight of being watched without rest. Because when you're crowned as perfection, you're no longer seen as human. And that may be the quietest tragedy of all. Not losing yourself, but never being allowed to fully show yourself in the first place. Tamar Braxton, living in a shadow that had a name. Tamar Braxton was born into a family where greatness already had a face. That face was Toni Braxton. From the outside, the Braxtons looked blessed. Talent stacked on talent. Harmony running through their bloodline. But inside that house, comparison wasn't accidental. It was constant. Toni was a voice, the standard, the proof that the dream was real. Tamar was the echo. She sang just as hard, worked just as relentlessly. But every room she walked into already belonged to someone else. Every compliment came with an invisible footnote. Not like your sister. And that kind of pressure doesn't fade. It burrows. As Tamar fought for her own lane, the industry didn't help. Executives saw her as the other Braxton. Media framed her as louder, brasher, harder to market. Where Tony was elegance, Tamar was chaos. Where Tony was timeless, Tamar was too much. So Tamar became more dramatic, more outspoken, more visible. Because if she couldn't be accepted quietly, she would be noticed loudly. But being loud doesn't protect you from pain. It only masks it. As reality TV amplified her image, the scrutiny sharpened. Cameras captured every angle, every expression, every flaw. Online, the commentary was ruthless. Her skin tone, her face, her features, always compared, always measured. And slowly, Tamar began to adjust. Not for beauty, for survival. Her face changed in increments. Subtle at first, then noticeable. Viewers pointed it out before she ever addressed it. The jokes came fast. The memes faster. The cruelty felt familiar because it echoed the same voice she'd been fighting her entire life. You're not enough as you are. Behind the scenes, Tamar was unraveling. The pressure of comparison, a collapsing marriage, public humiliation dressed up as entertainment, the expectation to perform strength while privately suffocating. In 2020, the mask finally cracked. She survived a suicide attempt. And in that moment, everything else fell silent. The face, the fame, the comparisons. None of it mattered. What remained was a woman who had spent her entire life trying to outrun a shadow that wasn't even hers. A shadow that had a name, a voice, and a legacy she was never meant to carry. Tamar didn't change because she wanted to be someone else. She changed because she was never allowed to be just herself. Her story isn't about insecurity. It's about what happens when identity is constantly measured against someone you love and can never escape, because sometimes the most dangerous pressure doesn't come from the world. It comes from home. Nicki Minaj, turning the mirror into a weapon. Nicki Minaj didn't enter the industry asking to be accepted. She came in daring it to reject her. From the beginning, she understood something most artists learn too late. Hip-hop wasn't built to protect black women, especially not ones who refuse to shrink. So Nicki didn't soften herself. She exaggerated. Colorful wigs, hyper-feminine curves, faces that shifted with every era. She became a moving target, impossible to pin down. And that was the point, because if the world was going to judge her appearance anyway, she would control the narrative. Reinvention wasn't insecurity, it was armor. But armor gets heavy. As Nicki rose to dominance, the scrutiny intensified. Every new look triggered debates. Was her skin lighter? Was her face altered? Was she losing herself or finally owning herself? The internet treated her body like a public project, dissecting angles, tones, timelines. Nicki didn't deny it. She mocked it. She leaned into the spectacle, daring critics to keep up. Where other women were shamed into silence, Nicki weaponized visibility. If beauty standards were absurd, she would push them to the extreme until they broke. But behind the bravado was exhaustion, because power doesn't erase pressure, it multiplies it. Being the most visible woman in rap meant being the most dissected. Every evolution was labeled deception. Every choice was turned into proof of insecurity. And still, she refused to retreat. Nicki Minaj didn't change to disappear. She changed to dominate. Yet the tragedy is this. When a woman controls her image too completely, people stop asking why, and only argue whether she's allowed to. Her artistry gets buried under arguments about her face, her body, her skin. Nicki became untouchable, but also unreachable. In the end, her story isn't about losing identity. It's about bending identity until it becomes unrecognizable, not to herself, but to everyone else. Because Nicki Minaj didn't let the mirror judge her. She shattered it and built a throne from the pieces. Megan Good, the scar beneath the spotlight. Megan Good was never chasing transformation. She was trying to preserve what Hollywood told her was already fading. For years, she was celebrated for her natural glow, smooth brown skin, youthful radiance, effortless beauty. But as roles slowed and expectations tightened, a quiet fear crept in. What if time became her enemy? One treatment, one promise, just a subtle refresh. The acid peel was supposed to be routine, controlled, professional. It wasn't. The burning came first, sharp, unforgiving. Then the blistering. By the time the mirror told the truth, the damage was already done. Raw patches bloomed across her chest and neck, like fire scars, painful and impossible to hide. 8 days later, she stepped onto a red carpet anyway. She smiled through clenched teeth. Cameras flashed. Fabric concealed what makeup couldn't. No one knew silicone pads were pressed against open wounds. No one saw the price beneath the dress. But she felt it. That night didn't just scar her skin. It rewired her confidence. From then on, high collars replaced plunging gowns. Style became camouflage. Elegance became defense. Megan Good didn't lose her beauty. She lost the freedom to stop protecting it. And sometimes that loss cuts deeper than any burn. Serena Williams, when power wasn't enough. For decades, Serena Williams was untouchable. Her body was strength. Her skin was pride. Every Grand Slam trophy felt like a declaration. This is what black excellence looks like when it refuses to apologize. She didn't just win. She dominated in a world that never built space for her. But even queens grow tired of being armor. In private, away from courts and crowds, curiosity slipped in. A luxury treatment. A promise of glow, recovery, renewal. Just one moment not about competition. About care. Or so it seemed. When she emerged, something was wrong. The brightness wasn't radiance. It was rawness. Her hands burned. Her skin reacted like it had been stripped, not restored. Days later, a short public appearance told a story she never meant to share. A pale face, swollen hands. A contrast the internet noticed instantly. Speculation exploded. Judgment followed. But the real weight wasn't public suspicion. It was a quiet moment afterward, staring at the same hands that had lifted trophies, now trembling from chemicals. Proof that even the strongest body can be wounded, not by defeat, but by doubt. Serena didn't lose her legacy. She learned that power doesn't make you immune to pressure. It just hides how heavy it truly is. Patti LaBelle, the gloves that hid a wound. Patti LaBelle's voice never needed permission. For decades, it soared above trends, above youth, above expectation. She stood as proof that black artistry didn't fade with time. It matured. But the industry has a cruel habit of whispering doubts to women once the spotlight begins to shift. By the late 90s, as younger, lighter faces dominated screens. Patti felt it. Not in her voice, but in how the world looked at her. One suggestion. One small adjustment. A treatment meant to even things out. Instead, it marked her forever. The peel damaged her hands unevenly, leaving patches that no powder could fully disguise. During a live performance, cameras caught what she hoped no one would notice. In that instant, Patti understood something brutal. The audience would applaud the voice, but stare at the flaw. From then on, the gloves appeared. Silk, satin, elegant, praise as style. But they were armor. Every time she slipped them on, she wasn't hiding vanity. She was protecting dignity. Because even legends are pushed to correct what never needed fixing. 11 women, 11 stories, different paths, the same pressure. They weren't weak. They weren't broken. They were human in a system that profits from insecurity. Hollywood didn't force their hands. It did something quieter. It made doubt feel reasonable. It turned lighting into judgment, aging into failure, identity into something negotiable. These women didn't lose their beauty. They were asked to trade it for survival. And the most painful truth isn't what changed on the surface. It's what was taken internally. Because when the world keeps asking you to fix yourself, you eventually start wondering if you were ever allowed to be whole. This isn't a story about skin. It's a story about pressure. And until that pressure is named, The scars will keep finding new faces.